Today on the Travel Magazine, the ultimate African adventure. A flight through history will lead us to the untamed wilderness of the South African bush. Aptly known as Paradise Country, few regions in the world can match the beauty of South Africa's panoramic landscape. This is also the setting for some marvelous game reserves teeming with wildlife. Hi, I'm Jake de Boer.
And I'm Mieke de Boer, and welcome to this edition of the Travel Magazine.
Join us as we board South African Airways Sky Coach service and rediscover the adventure of vintage air travel. See some of the big five at Kapama Game Reserve, then wing your way to award-winning Shamwari in the Eastern Cape, where you'll find conservation at its very best. South African Airways offers a very unique way to travel to the private game reserve of Kapama and other destinations with their Sky Coach service. Their DC-3 or DC-4 aircraft will take you back to the incredible in-flight service of the 1930s and 40s. In the early 1980s, South African Airways wanted to acquire a Ju-52 for their 50th anniversary. This was the aircraft with which they had started their airline. After a long search, one was discovered in England. It was taken to Germany, where it was painstakingly restored for its flight to South Africa. There, South African Airways technicians began the demanding task of reassembling and recertifying for commercial flight an aircraft most people had never seen before. Finally, on the 16th of January 1984, the South African Airways Ju-52 took to the skies once again.
I've always had an interest in old planes and the history of aviation. You know, I've been in flying for quite a long time, and I would say the DC-4 had been responsible for various highlights in my flying career and indeed in my life. We've had wonderful opportunities of flying across the whole world with the DC-4s.
For travelers, it's a unique experience and often the thrill of a lifetime. All their historic aircraft are stationed at Johannesburg International Airport.
What we are trying to do is to provide our passengers with an opportunity to sample the ambience of first-class travel of the years gone by, the way it was in the 50s and in the 60s. We are trying to offer our passengers a unique experience.
Our journey began with a warm welcome from our captain and his crew. It's the kind of personal attention you would have received in the 1940s and 50s. Once the engines are warmed up, it's time to fly. Sit back, relax, and enjoy a wonderful part of history. In the air, the first-class service of the 40s and 50s continues. The view below is stunning. You sense how isolated our destination is. After a perfect landing, it's time to begin our safari right at the airport.
When you fly into Eastgate Airport and you walk through the airport building, you get straight onto Game Drive vehicle, an open Land Rover, and you cross literally over the street into the game park, into the reserve, and you're immediately on a Game Drive. The rangers are very professional, and the knowledge of the wildlife as well as the plant life is exceptional, and a lot of attention to detail.
Are you ready to get out?
Great.
Okay.
Jack, let me get out this way. Ladylike.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you.
Good day.
Very refreshing.
I'm Jake Brewer.
Nice to meet you, Jake.
This
Welcome.
is Mika.
Hi, Mika. Welcome. Nice to meet you.
The doors swing open and reveal the rich textures within Kapama Game Reserve's lodge. The decor is a perfect blend of exotic African splendor and luxury living. The view from the veranda is breathtaking, and you can watch an abundance of animals and birds in their natural habitat. It's also an ideal place to cool off from the warm African sun. Traveling in an open vehicle, you'll explore the African bush where a multitude of game, plants and bird life reveal the true nature of the African continent. Our South African safari at Kapama continues.
We will be back with more of the game reserves of South Africa just after this, so stay with us.
We travel through the heart of the bushveld at Kapama Game Reserve. There is an abundance of game, and it's exciting to see them roam in their natural habitat. Kapama is home to Africa's Big Five: lion, buffalo, elephant, rhino, and leopard. And of course, you can't go on safari without encountering the tallest animal in the world. Game drives in the reserve are taken in open Land Rovers. These vehicles are perfect for wildlife photography without disturbing the animals and habitat of the African bush. The Hoedspruit Cheetah project is internationally renowned for its breeding program of cheetah and other endangered species.
The problem with cheetahs is that they've always been in conflict with the stock farmers, taking sheep and small cows and that. So they've actually been, they were at one stage virtually exterminated. So we saw this centre really as a refuge or a haven for persecuted animals, and we get phoned regularly from stock farmers to come and to take these animals in. And we do breed them. We do have a very successful breeding program. The main aim is to reintroduce them into the wild. Rehabilitated stock farms are becoming more and more available every day because the farmers are realizing that game farming in this area particularly is actually more profitable than cattle farming. So we reintroduce them back into areas where they formerly occurred.
After the sun goes down, guests of Kapama Game Reserve have a rare opportunity to see an abundance of wildlife in the natural environment on a game drive at night. Back on board South African Airways DC-4, you fly to your next destination, the Eastern Cape. Through the window you see Shambari, one of South Africa's most southern game reserves. Here you can enjoy viewing much more game. Shambari is also home to more than 18 different species of antelope.
We moved on to the hilltops at the moment, and you'll see how the vegetation changes from the valleys to the hilltops. We've got more of the scrub veld, more of the fynbos, and it's host to a variety of different types of game. This is more the plains game as opposed to the bush-dwelling antelope.
Dating back to a time when game roamed freely on the Eastern Cape, the 14,000-hectare game reserve is steeped in history. Conserving a vanishing way of life is the purpose of Shambari Game Reserve. For all its efforts in conservation, the Game Reserve has been given a number of international awards.
I'm looking forward to the dinner tonight. Did you see the onions?
The word Shamwari means my friend in Shona. And at Shamwari, we have a very serious conservation ethic that we apply. It's bringing back all the animals that were in this area many years ago. It's trying to get the bush back to its former state. It's the restoration of these old settler lodges, and it's bringing back the cultural elements to this part of South Africa. So Shamwari is a very unique private game reserve that was established about 7-8 years ago, where 14,000 hectares of land was acquired. Now these farms were virtually devastated by droughts, by overgrazing, and by marginal agricultural practices. Adrian Gardner, the owner of Shamwari, much to his amazement discovered that this area used to be very, very rich in wildlife many years ago. In fact, it used to be one of the richest wildlife zones in Africa in terms of diversity. Adrian then had this vision to bring back all these animals to this part of South Africa. And that, in essence, is how Shamwari started 7 years ago.
When we return, we'll visit the king of the reserve and Kaya Landaba, a traditional African arts and cultural village on the reserve.
So what are you doing?
I'm making a meal in
For the porridge. For the porridge. Is it easy to do?
It's very easy. You can try.
Can I try?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. 1, 2. We will be back with more of the Travel Magazine just after this, so stay with us. Good.
Game drives at Shambari are taken with highly experienced rangers. They use open Land Rovers so you can fully appreciate the plains, bushveld, valleys, and vast species of birds and animals that roam freely.
We have 5 lodges in Shamwari, the biggest one being Longley Manor, which is the restored Edwardian old settler home, which is the biggest lodge. We have a 5-star luxury bush lodge called Shamwari Lodge, and then we have another 3 old settler homes that we've restored. These houses were built in 1860. We've restored these lodges, and there are 3 of them on the reserve.
A short drive from Highfield Lodge is the Born Free Conservation and Education Center.
We have all heard about the story of Born Free. Tell us about it.
Mika, it's a fascinating story about the Born Free Foundation and the work they do in conjunction with Shamwari, and in specific with these 2 lines here. The Born Free Foundation is headed up by Virginia McKenna, and they're based in the UK, and they discovered these 2 lines on my right-hand side were kept in a 3 by 5 meter container above a restaurant in Tenerife. And they negotiated with the Spanish government for about 5 years to have these lines released. They eventually achieved that. The lines were then taken to Kent in the south of England, where they spent 2 years recouping, and then about a year and a half ago, these lines were brought to South Africa. Shamwari heard about the Born Free Foundation and about the plight of these lines because they were looking for a home for them in Africa. So Adrian Gardner, the owner, got in touch with Virginia McKenna and offered Shamwari as a destination for these 2 lines to spend the rest of their lives here. And that's how Anthea and Rafi came to Shamwari.
While at Shambari, a visit to Kaya Landaba gives you the opportunity to witness a way of life that Africans had many years ago. This traditional village is an ethnic center of storytelling and art.
Welcome to Kaya Landaba, a multicultural African village in the heartland of the Eastern Cape, the land of the Amaxhosa. This is where some of the most dramatic historical events of our people, the African people, took place. The Fish River to my west and the Bushman's River at one time served as a frontier against the Boers. And if you go to Grahamstown, about plus and minus 50 kilos from here to the east, this is where some of the most pitched battles were fought with the Boers. And of course, this used to be a farmland of the 1820 settlers. The first African prophet, Nzikana, was born here. The author of our national anthem, Sondonga, was born here in the Eastern Cape. And so we welcome you, as we say in our language, Siyadamkela ekhaya lendaba. The drums of the cowhide have informed us about your approach. And so now they are giving us permission that you can come in. Sibabonile yogetina ke naso hey hey Hai sibonile ngaphi tshona ngaphi sondela ngapha hai Hai nothing sisa ngaphi sithi ngapha oh yo Hai sibabonile ke thina hey enyuka izindaba hai ebekhwele ngaphesheya hai abenyuka izindaba hai ayikhwele ngaphesheya hayi ayinyuka izindaba hayi ayikhwele ngaphesheya hayi ayinyuka izindaba hayi ayikhwele ngaphesheya hayi. This is a hunting dance. Perhaps you may see the animals in the dance.
Well, that's it for this edition of the Travel Magazine. We hope you've enjoyed the game reserves of South Africa as much as we have. I'm Jake de Boer.
And I'm Mieke de Boer, and join us again as we travel the world.
La